Hello, elementary art teachers. I'm here today with a quick tip to help you when it comes to painting and painting for several classes at a time. What I do is I do have several classes. I only have 5 minutes in between each class, and I try to focus in on just one type of medium as I go through that rotation period. So for the full week, I might be doing painting with every class, just a different type of painting at a different level. So my first graders would do something very simple, whereas when I get to fifth grade group or something that has to do with complementary colors versus primary colors. So those are the things that I do with them when it comes to creating painting. But I did want to share some tips on making this situation a little bit easier, a little bit faster when it comes to cleanup. I like to be able to have everything all cleaned up really fast so I can keep going. So I do use the liquid tempera paint, and I used to put them in a cup like this for painting, and then you have the tops, and I can store it. And these are great because it does allow you to store the paints with a cap on it, and then you can put the brush in and just wipe the brush off as you paint. Great. The thing is, I'd have to wash all of these cups on a regular basis, and I did not want to spend a lot of time washing cups because I do spend a lot of time cleaning up. So I like being prepped ahead of time. So what I've decided to do instead is to use just some Ziploc bags and take the Ziploc bag and line the cup with the Ziploc bag and leave, kind of peel it over the outside edge. And then I'll pour my paint into my Ziploc bag, and then the kids are able to take their brush and just dip in the paint, then paint on their papers. And so I do like using that method. I think it's great to be able to do that. And then when they're all done and they have finished, I can take the Ziploc bag for that night, because I do it for the entire week. I zip it up, and then I leave it in the cup, and then I use it again the next day, and so on and so forth. When I'm all done with the paint, if the paint doesn't have any other colors mixed in it, and all I'm using is this green, all I do is I will cut off the corner of my bag and then just pour it all the way back into the bottle, and then that way I can actually use the paint again. So I just cut the little tip off and squeeze it, and then put all the paint in, and then I just take this and throw it in the trash, and I still have a clean cup. Okay, so I do love being able to do that and store it all week long. The other way that I've stored paint is when I'm just using a tiny bit of paint. What I do is I use these little condiment cups, and you can find them at Walmart or even on Amazon in bulk. And I just kind of store the paint inside of these little cups with the top, and they just wash off super easy. And I love being able to store things in there, especially when I'm working with paint that I'm using for clay, glazes, and things like that. I do like using them in these very small cups because I don't use a lot of that paint when they are actually using it. And I'll store them in that for the week. Then when it is time to paint, I allow the students to use a giant sheet of 24 by 18 sheet of paper as a messy mat on the tables. So my kids paint on tables, and they paint flat for most of the year. At the end of the year is when I introduce easels. But when they're painting flat, I do give them just a white sheet of 9 by 12, or either I might even have the larger sheets for them to use. And either way, they both fit on that big sheet of paper. So when they paint off the edges, which I encourage them to do so that they have a nice smooth edge, they paint off the paper, and that way it's on the paper and not all over the table, and they're not having to clean the tables, or I'm not having to really clean them in between every class. So what I do is I let them paint, and then I let them store. They can store their artwork on the messy mat, or they could just store the messy mat and then their artwork separate on a drying rack, and I'm fine with that. And it only takes a couple classes to be dry, and I can use it again and again. So I might use 2 sets of messy mats throughout the day, and I'm switching them out as they dry. So, and I just use a big sheet of either black or I might even use brown or some manila paper, something really inexpensive, but I do use it over and over again. And when it becomes just way too messy, I take that and just throw it in the trash. But if my tables do get a little dirty, and I do expect the kids to be independent and take care of those things, I do ask them to wipe their tables off. So the kids use wipes, and you can get wipes in bulk, but I allow the kids to use the wipes, and they go through the bucket like this, and you open the lid and you try to pull them out. Well, kids will pull a lot of the wipes at one time, and so I don't want them to be wasted that way. I do allow them to use them, but I want to make sure that they're not using more than one at a time. So instead, I prep these ahead of time. I put them inside just a small container with a lid. That way I can store them overnight. And all I do is take the whole roll out and I pull them all apart. And so once they're all pulled apart and they're in there and I've got enough for a class period, when the kids are done at their tables, or they're done and they're ready to clean up their tables, they just come and remove the lid, and then they can grab one. And that way they can wipe off their tables. It's much easier to pull it out this way, especially for my little kinders. So just know that these are some great ways to clean up with art and make it nice and efficient. I hope this has helped you.